But I was just saying to you, and I think you were agreeing, there's a sea change going on in women's health in the last year or two. Talk to me about how you feel the difference, how you can sense the difference right now.
So I look back about 5 years ago. So that was, I guess, the onset of the pandemic, if we do that. And there was still a huge discrepancy in women's health.
Right.
But because of the outcomes and the differential outcomes of the pandemic, it made the entire global medical system stand up and go, what's going on here? So then when we start talking about sex differences and physiological differences between men and women, it started resonating. So now we see the research is coming out is really trying to focus more on women's health, not generalizing from a male data set. And there are really specific points of contention that are really starting to be examined. So we look at all the cancer treatments, we look at dementia and Alzheimer's, and we also see all the menopause conversation around hormone therapies, which then resonates back to like PCOS and endometriosis, all these things that have been ignored up to this point. And now there's like a groundswell movement to really try to bring that to the forefront. So if we think, oh, it's 2025, almost 2026, and we still don't have an answer to what causes endometriosis or what is a better option for PCOS than using an oral contraceptive pill or some kind of hormone therapy. So starting to dig in more into that. So it's really interesting to see this shift and especially globally having a shift. And I guess that's the only positive thing that came out of the pandemic.
But but when people come up to you or respond to you on social media, can you tell a difference in the questions that they are asking the general public? Are they feeling empowered? Are they just waking up to like, wow, there's no funding, there are no answers, I didn't know this? What's the difference you can tell?
So I get a lot of questions of how can I help with research? Can I be a participant? Have you looked at this avenue for research funding? Have you looked at this avenue? Have you talked to this VC? So there's a lot of that kind of conversation that's coming up. But more and more women are going, this finally makes sense. Like now I can go talk to my doctor and tell them what I'm experiencing, but not feel like I'm being gaslit. I think people are taking more ownership of their health now. And now they're really trying to find out what specifically does this mean to me and what can I do? Instead of just the traditional ways to go to a physician tells you, well, this is what's wrong or not wrong and take this and do that. But there's this distrust in the medical system now, or the lack of access and lack of resources. So people are really trying to own it for themselves to then be able to go telehealth or normal doctor and say, these are the things, this is what I know, can you help me? If not, then I need to find someone else.
And women's health for so long was viewed as a mammogram and a pap smear and out the door, right?
Yeah.
And that women really need to know that at every decade, their health is completely different.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about that, because you talk about PCOS or when we talk about reproductive health, and all of a sudden we're in menopause or perimenopause, and then we're postmenopausal, and it's all different.
Yeah.
And your advice to women at those different junctures is completely different.
Yeah. So I always start at puberty now that my daughter is like in the middle of it, but awareness of it, and you see it. It's like we see a definitive point where girls stop being physically active, and that is not wanting to run around on the playground and that kind of stuff, because they're starting to feel very ungangly in their body. They don't feel confident. And the way that the system is set up is to perpetuate that, not intentionally, but just because there hasn't been awareness of how there's a difference between boys and girls as they go through puberty, where girls complete biomechanics, so the way that they move changes. Their hips widen, their knee to hip angle is different, their shoulder girdle widens. So now running and throwing and jumping is completely different and not very comfortable.
And they're self-conscious.
Exactly.
All of a sudden that becomes their dominant emotional.
Right. And the way that they think and perceive instructions. So I use the example of the football pitch or the soccer pitch, where if you have a boys team and they're told to do corner kicks one-on-one, the boys are really into it. Let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. But you tell the girls to do corner kicks one-on-one, they're like, yeah, no. Because they don't feel like, they don't want to be singled out. But if you say, okay, we're gonna do pair corner kicks, they're all in. So it's just the way that we understand how the girls are developing physically, but also emotionally and mentally, where they feel that everyone's watching them and it's really uncomfortable. They don't know what to do in their new body. All of a sudden, they might be growing boobs and body composition is changing. But if we switch and say, you know what, we can coach them from a mental and a physical aspect that encourages new strength and functional movement through these new biomechanics, and we create a learning environment that isn't toxic, that's a safe space, then they flourish. So we've seen a lot of pilot programs that are coming through when the parents or the coach or the teacher even is educated, that they can then talk to them, and they can also say, and your period is going to start. It's going to be irregular for a bit of time, but this is what happens. So then when we get into our steady reproductive years, this is where we have our sex hormones that kind of work for us for recovery, for muscle development, bone development. So we have a little bit of play. It's in those reproductive years we see more and more what we call anovulatory cycles. So we aren't actually ovulating, so we might not know, and this leads into fertility issues that Natalie Crawford out of Austin talks a lot about. It's an inflammatory response, it's environmental toxins, it is a lack of sleep, it's the stress. So we have to be aware of all of the societal pressures that can alter menstrual cycle and menstrual cycle function in our reproductive years. And how do we retrain according to the stress and the load that's going on with regards to the rest of life, so that we can really support menstrual function and endocrine function for the health of the woman as she's aging, because this is where we're getting peak bone density, where we're getting lots of neuroplasticity, we're developing stress resilience, immunity, all of these things that can change across the menstrual cycle. We want to be able to encompass and enhance with the type of physical training and mental training that we're doing.
And then you focus on women, let's just say in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s and beyond. So while you're saying you're working with young girls about telling them their periods are coming on, their body may be changing, then you move into women whose periods are leaving and their bodies may be changing and their brains are also changing. Their mood is changing. Their bones are changing. Everything is out of whack. What is the best advice today for a woman in her 40s, 50s, and 60s so that she can age well, age independently, and age with strength?
Yeah, so we look at the four main factors that go into a health span. So we look at sleep and nailing sleep. We have to be able to do that, or we can't instigate any kind of change. Physical activity and nutrition, so those kind of go hand in hand, interchangeable depending on motivation, and then the mindfulness and community engagement. So if someone was coming to me and say, give me the top 2 things that I need to do so that it can age well, like nail sleep and strength training. Because when we look at the upsurgence of research on strength training, knowing that I come from a long cardio background, the Kate Moss and the calories in, calories out, and learning about strength training along the way, we see not only is strength training great for power, which we lose significantly and now is a really strong indicator of mortality. We lose overall strength as we get older as well, especially when we're in perimenopause, because of the way our sex hormones affect our muscle and our bone and our neural connections. So if we're doing strength training, we're covering the power, we're covering the strength, we're also increasing neuroplasticity. So that helps reduce Alzheimer and dementia risks, and we're also building bone. So if there's one physical activity intervention, then I would say strength training. We start with maybe body weight and move our way up into heavier loads.
But you're not, which I think is super cool. You're talking about strength training, but you're talking about also a particular kind of strength training. You're doubling down.
Yeah, I'm doubling down on it.
Talk about that and distinguishing, doubling down and distinguishing. You're not talking light weights. No. You're not talking even about 10-pound bicep curls.
No, I'm not.
Okay, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about lifting heavy.
So what's heavy?
Yeah, so this is relative, right?
Yeah.
So if someone has never ever done any strength training, I'm not going to throw them in the gym and say, we're going to do 200-pound deadlifts, because that is injury and they're not going to be able to do it. The gyms are pretty much still very gendered and a little bit scary. So we look at the journey. So if someone's never done anything, I'm going to phase them in. I'm going to start with body weight. I'm going to add some 10-pound dumbbells. And then as they get stronger and get through the range of motion and can move well, then we start getting really specific into our heavy range of lifting. So if we look at the schematic of strength and conditioning, we see that 0 to 5 rep range is our power and strength based range. And we know that power is really important, so that's how fast you can move under load. And for women, we only have a certain amount of fibers that move quickly, and we start to lose those really rapidly as we age. So we want to work that end of things. And for strength, we want that central nervous system response because we want that neuroplasticity. We want to keep instigating Wordle type movements in the brain with physical activity. So if we're looking at no more than 8 reps at 80% or more of 1 rep max. So what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Right, exactly. So I like to say, if you go into a gym or you're going to lift some weights, I want you to pick a weight that feels heavy, and I want you to lift it at least 8 times. If you can lift it 8 times, and towards the end of that, you think you might be able to eke out 2 more repetitions with that weight with really good form, that's your 80%. We call that 8 reps with 2 in reserve. So that's the type of loading we want. Ideally, we want to get you back down to 3 to 5, but it takes about a year to learn how to lift that heavy properly. And it's a bit scary for people when we start talking about those kinds of loads. So it is relative. It's like I might go in jet lagged to the gym, and when I'm at home, I can deadlift 200 pounds, but if I'm jet lagged, I might only be able to lift 160 with 2 reps in reserve. So it's very changeable. It's how heavy it is on the day with the eye of by the time you finish being in your strength training session, you feel worked, but you don't feel exhausted like you've done a spin class. Because we want central nervous system activation, we want total body movement, we want the strength and development of the muscles, but we don't want that tear down, complete ripped feeling that so many women are used to having, that big sweaty session that they think, oh, well, I did a really hard workout because I'm completely smashed. That's not very appropriate. We're looking for the low end, heavy loads with lots of rest between our repetitions so that we are able to really tax central nervous system. Because the idea of it is we want to be able to carry our own suitcases when we're 90, right? We want to be able to move well. We want to be able to pick our groceries up and put them overhead when we are living by ourselves and when we're very aged. So we start now, however early you can, and start building that tolerance and building that load to maintain brain health as well as our bone and our muscle health.